You can call me Mystic Mike because I predict these things.
Alexander Volkanovski takes on Diego Lopes Saturday, April 12th as the main event of UFC 314. This is to crown the new featherweight champ now that Ilia Topuria has vacated to move up to 155. And this is a bittersweet fight for me. It sucks that one of these guys has to win and one of them has to lose, and then I've got to pick against one of them. Volkanovski, one of my favorite fighters of all time, absolute legend in the sport at 145 and at 155, moving up to fight Islam Makhachev, taking on Diego Lopes. Super fun, exciting young fighter coming up. Always puts on a show, down to take on whoever, whenever. So huge fan of both of these guys. So it sucks that they got to meet and one's got to go home with a loss. But Diego Lopes on an absolute tear right now since he joined the UFC. Took on Movsar Evloev on short notice back in May of 2023, so not even 2 years ago. Been on a run, 5-fight unbeaten streak, a lot of finishes to get his shot at the title. His debut didn't go his way, but Movsar Evloev is a tough out for anybody. He took that on short notice, getting finishes over Gavin Tucker, Pat Sabatini, Sadiq Youssef, and then tough fights against Dan Ige and Brian Ortega, where he almost finished Brian Ortega. So very, very good performances. Alexander Volkanovski, on the other hand, also on an absolute tear in the UFC back in the day. As of late, not so great, but again, his most recent 3 losses are against, two of the top 5 pound-for-pound guys in the world, in Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria, getting knocked out by each of them in his last 2 fights. Beat Yair Rodriguez, and then lost Islam Makhachev at 155 before that. Probably one of the best fights I've ever seen in the UFC. But I got to pick somebody to win this one. And I know that Volkanovski is a small favorite here. I want to say he was like a minus 140 around there. But I got to go Diego Lopes in this one. Diego Lopes, he's the younger guy. Hasn't been taking the damage that Alexander Volkanovski's been taking. Volkanovski was looking good against Ilia Topuria, landing his leg kicks, landing his strikes, moving out of the way of, everything that Topuria was throwing. Even bloodied him up a little bit in that second round before he got caught. And honestly, I'm glad he's not rematching Topuria because I feel like, the same thing would happen again. Before that, Islam Makhachev, again, took the fight on short notice. I think that was I expect nothing less from Volkanovski, who's an absolute stud, savage, taking that fight on short notice, but I just feel like that was a terrible idea for him to take. You could tell he was out of shape. He wasn't prepared and got finished by Islam Makhachev. So he's been chinned twice in his last 2 fights. Hasn't fought in over a year. Hasn't had a win in almost 2 years. 3-4 in his last 4 fights. You got to look at Diego Lopes. He's a young killer, very talented on the feet, tons of power at 145. Has all the momentum. I think he has the better jiu-jitsu and the better scrambling ability than Volkanovski. We've seen him do really well against grapplers. We've seen him, get out of submissions by Brian Ortega. But that's Brian Ortega, and I don't rate Ortega very highly, in all honesty. Diego Lopes, he's very high-level black belt, getting submissions over Gavin Tucker the way that he did. Gavin Tucker shot a takedown. He leaps up, gets him in a triangle, eventually gets a triangle armbar within under 2 minutes of the first round. The way that he's knocking out guys, Sadiq Youssef, Pat Sabatini, kind of shut down Dan Ige. That was a very competitive fight, honestly, against Dan Ige. But again, it was on short notice. And then how he just beat the brakes off of Brian Ortega, who's been, high level for the longest time, fighting really good guys in his career. So I got to go with Diego Lopes, the younger guy, faster guy. I think he carries more power. I think he has more power than Volkanovski, and I think that he can catch him. Volkanovski, throws really good leg kicks, moves well side to side. He's just kind of predictable on the feet, and I feel like Ilia Topuria, he at the beginning of that fight was able to finally pick up that, he kind of just backed straight up, circle away and back towards his left, kind of, and I feel like he timed that with his right hand to pin him against the cage and catch him. I feel like Diego Lopes can game plan against somebody like Volkanovski and beat him on the feet, and then if it goes to the ground, get the sub. I really do. I think Diego Lopes is that high level. I am concerned about his cardio. He took that fight with Dan Ige, and I understand that I give the guy who was planning on fighting an excuse as well as the guy who stepped up on short notice, because he's got to, take on somebody that he wasn't game planning for, that he couldn't build a camp around. And I forget who he was fighting. He was supposed to fight, he was supposed to fight Brian Ortega, so he's going up against a guy with, lackluster stand-up who's going to be looking to get the fight on the ground. And then on, 4 hours notice, he's taking on Dan Ige, arguably one of the hardest hitters in the division, great wrestler, great all-around fighter. And Dan Ige didn't have to cut weight, so he was able to he wasn't training for it, but again, he didn't have to cut weight, so that helps him in the cardio department, whereas Diego Lopes had to cut weight several times for that fight and took this fight on short notice. So he really gassed in the third round, which is concerning considering this is a 5-round fight and Alexander Volkanovski is super hard to get out of there. Also the fact that he's never gone 5 rounds in his career. He's only gone 3 rounds, which is just crazy that he's getting a title shot when they haven't really tested him at 5 rounds or made him, actually just at least do a training camp for 5 rounds. You look at Alexander Volkanovski, he's had nothing but 5-round fights since, 2019. So like 5 or 6 years, he's been doing nothing but 5-round camps, planning for 5 rounds with the elite of the elite in one of the most skilled divisions in the UFC. So I do think this one is super close. I just got to go Diego Lopes because he's the younger fighter, and I feel like he has more finishing potential. Volkanovski is the man, but you look through his career, it is a lot of decisions. He does have some finishes, but a lot of decisions. And you look at Diego Lopes, and he's hurting guys, putting them in a lot of trouble, or finishing them. But then I look through his career, and he's got some not so great wins. He lost to Joe Anderson Brito, which I can completely forgive, just because Brito's an absolute savage. But losing to like Nate Richardson on the regional scene, getting TKO'd by strikes to some guys I've never even heard of. 2 other losses on the regional scene, a loss to a guy who was 2-4. But again, that was a long time ago, and he has completely changed his game since then and become an absolute savage in that division. He's going to be a little bit bigger as well. He's 5'11", whereas Alexander Volkanovski, he's 5'6". But Volkanovski's got, stupid good reach for his height. He's got 71.5-inch reach, and Diego Lopes has 72.5-inch reach. So he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage and a 5-inch height advantage. So I imagine this fight will take place on the feet. I don't see Volkanovski shooting for takedowns at all in this fight. I think Diego Lopes will be looking to hurt him on the feet and mixing his takedowns to either get the takedown, go for the sub, or just open up his strikes. But I got to go Diego Lopes. Something we need to keep in mind is Volkanovski's taken a lot of damage in his last 2 fights, but he is taking like over a year off since his last fight, which you could argue is good for the chin. Let him get his rest and rehab in, but at the same time, he's 36. He's going to be 37 in September. So it's kind of that weird situation where the longer you wait, are you doing more harm than good? Whereas Diego Lopes, he's been extremely active. This will be his 7th fight in less than 2 years. So extremely active. Didn't take a lot of damage in his last fight against Brian Ortega. Probably hurt his hands from bouncing him off Ortega's skull, but that was in September. So even then, he's taken a decent amount of time off to get this shot. They made this fight back on February 19th. So not a lot of time for these guys to prepare, about 6 weeks. And I feel like that benefits Diego Lopes, the more active fighter. Alexander Volkanovski, again, not a lot of time to prepare against such a dangerous guy coming up who's not one-dimensional like Yair Rodriguez or Max Holloway, where you're just going to stand on the feet with him. A guy who's got a lot of finishing potential on the ground, can hurt you on the feet, can out-scramble you. It's going to be bigger than you. It's going to be younger than you. So it's just not a very good recipe for success for Volkanovski. Coming off of 2 KO losses, the hiatus, the time away from the octagon, taking on a guy with tons of momentum, and Diego Lopes, who can finish you anywhere if you make a mistake. So I gotta lean Diego Lopes to get this one done. I am concerned about his cardio, but I do think he can get the finish inside the distance against Volkanovski. I think he can get the sub. I think if Brian Ortega is getting him in trouble and getting him in really bad spots like he did, I think Diego Lopes can put him there too. But finish, he's much. I think he's the better all-around fighter than Ortega, and I think he's much stronger than soy boy Brian Ortega. So I'm gonna go Diego Lopes to get this one done as the underdog, as much as it pains me. But I gotta go with my brain instead of my heart in this one. So I'm gonna go with Diego Lopes to get the win. Next.